Jim.
Hello and welcome to MondayQuarterback.com. We're glad to have you here for our weekly show that we tape on Wednesday evenings. To my right I have fancy guru Eric Shelton. To my left I have the statistician Damon. I'm Keith Shelton. We are your experts on fantasy football, and today we're going to have a roundtable discussion about the fantasy impact of big moves in the off season. Now, moves happen quite a bit in the off season, and we're really not that concerned with the effect it's going to have on the team, but how it affects the fantasy. So, we will get on to that. Just yesterday, Brett Favre retires. Good, bad, indifferent, what's the fantasy impact? Talking to a guy from Janesville, Wisconsin just today, he mentioned to me that he was happy that he finally messed up another team besides the Packers. Eric, what's the fantasy impact of Brett Favre retiring, and does that really affect the Vikings or not?
I think it's good that Brett Favre retired. He is going to be not ruining his legacy like he did, like Michael Jordan earned his. Michael Jordan kept coming back to team after team and switched teams. Brett Favre has done the same thing. It is good that Brett Favre is no longer a Packer, no longer in the NFL.
Damon, what's your take?
I think this is actually devastating for the Vikings. They were counting on a good seasoned quarterback to come in and just balance the offense a little bit so that Adrian Peterson doesn't have to carry the whole load on his back like he did last year. I think it's a sad day.
So do you think this will affect Adrian Peterson's output throughout the season?
Oh, definitely. The thought of having Brett Favre back there to balance your offense and just open up the lanes for Adrian Peterson, just imagine what he could have done. But now, who they got? Sage Rosenfeld or Jabarius Jackson?
So is that what Thomas Jones did last year? He just lit it up?
Did Thomas Jones last year, take case in point. He had over 10 touchdowns. This year, he'd probably be lucky to get 5.
Thomas Jones did run behind an outstanding offensive line last year. Let's move on to the biggest trade of the season, and that absolutely was Jay Cutler and Kyle Orton. What do you think, Damon, on the Cutler-Orton trade? Let's start with Orton on his impact with the Denver Broncos. Is Brandon Marshall, we already know he's disgruntled about things, is he going to be okay with Orton throwing the ball to him? He doesn't have the cannon that Jay Cutler does.
I think Brandon Marshall's still Brandon Marshall, but it's not going to be Brandon Marshall with Jay Cutler, so I would cut back my expectations just a little bit there. Personally, it's a sad day. As a huge Jay Cutler and Denver fan, he was great for me last year. I'm really not looking forward to drafting Kyle Orton with the same set of receivers that Cutler had.
Okay. Eric, let's move on to Jay Cutler. Jay Cutler is now a Bear. What's that mean for the Bears' offense and the fantasy impact that he's going to have? He doesn't have the receivers, but he does have Devin Hester, who is fast.
The Bears wanted to get rid of Kyle Orton, and they made a great trade by getting Jay Cutler. I think the actual biggest part is Kyle Orton going to Denver. He goes to Denver, he gets Eddie Royal and Brandon Marshall and a good running game, and they're going to actually establish a running game this year under the new coach. So I think that Kyle Orton was a bigger pickup than Jay Cutler.
I think the person that will benefit most of this trade is going to be Matt Forte. I think Matt Forte is now finally going to be able to run the ball behind a good offensive line without having 8 men in the box. I think Matt Forte absolutely benefits the most out of any fantasy impact on this trade. Now let's go to Terrell Owens, T.O. He has been cut by the Cowboys. He is now a Buffalo Bill. What is the fantasy impact of T.O. on the Bills? Eric?
T.O.'s like tobacco companies. He's a cancer. Stay away from T.O. as much as you can. The guy's old. He's in a walker. There's no other way to put it. He's old. He's not any good. He's past his prime.
Damon?
If T.O. can get his head out of the T.O. show long enough, I think he'll be quite happy with him. In 7 of the 8 past seasons, he's had over 10 touchdowns and 38 touchdowns in the past 3. I think, personally, for T.O., he's going to do just fine. The Bills, I think they're still the Bills.
I think T.O. is a must start in any league that you have him in. If you can get T.O. in the 3rd round, you have got a winner. Let's move on. Torrey Holt and the Jags. What's the fantasy impact on that, Damon? Let's start with Damon this time. What's the fantasy impact with Torrey Holt and the Jaguars?
Basically, there's no fantasy impact. I didn't like Torrey Holt last year. I don't like him this year. Stay away from Torrey Holt.
I agree with you, David. Torrey Holt hadn't done anything in the last 3 years. He's not going to do anything with Jacksonville. Stay away.
I think, actually, Torrey Holt's presence with the Jacksonville Jaguars increases the value of MJD, Maurice Jones-Drew. What he does is he prevents those people from jumping up into that box, and although not the super receiver that he was, he doesn't have the wheels that he did, he still has to be respected as a receiver. He does have good hands. MJD will benefit from Torrey Holt. Speaking of the Jags, Fred Taylor is no longer a Jag, and now a New England Patriot. Does that have any fantasy impact at all, Eric?
No, it does not. Fred Taylor's in a crowded backfield, and he will not get the carries that he deserves or thinks he does deserve.
Yeah, I'd absolutely agree with you. I've never really been satisfied with New England running backs. There's too many of them, and Fred Taylor personally just doesn't offer enough to warrant any sort of high pick on him at all.
It is a crowded backfield, but Lawrence Maroney has proven to all of us that he cannot carry the full load for the season. Speaking of the Patriots, how about Joey Galloway becoming one? Does that have a lot of fantasy impact? Is he going to take it away from Moss? Is he going to add to Moss? What's his role going to be, Damon?
I don't think it'll be much different than when Dante Stallworth was with the Patriots. He may get a couple touches here and there, but he's not the primary guy. They like to mix it up a lot. But Randy Moss is still the stud. And then you got Wes Welker and Galloway. He may get 1 or 2, but nothing to go writing home to mom about.
Eric, will Wes Welker's production go down with Joey Galloway as a Patriot?
No, it will not. Joey Galloway, in this stage of his career, is nothing but a 3rd or 4th receiver for the Patriots. So it's going to be the Randy Moss Walker show from here on out.
Okay.